is from Marlo Bannister. Why do the poor in red states always vote against their own interests? Makes you go, that's a great question.
Okay. Now that he's demolished you entirely, do you want to just whimper something to acknowledge defeat and then move on?
Well, I'm embarrassed for the man, like I'm embarrassed for all partisans. He assumes it's correct, and the question assumes they're correct. And they're not going to question any one of their assumptions. Instead, we're going to come up with some explanation for why the other guy's wrong. And
now he's claiming that it's racism, or what? Does he give a reason there?
No, he doesn't actually, which is amusing. He doesn't really answer the question. He just says that Democrats are right, Republicans are wrong, and the Republicans have all been misled by higher-ups.
The whites in the red states are perhaps too ignorant, I think, is the presumption.
Yeah, but that's not really even the point. The point is that the more interesting question, this is the wrong question to ask, because it assumes that our side is right. It's infantile. And people who ask questions like that are generally kind of infantile. The big question is, why do people generally in politics vote against their interest, if they do? Why would they? Are there reasons to? Yes, there are reasons to. They've been studied extensively by economists and somewhat by social psychologists and others. One of them is the simple fact that we learn by experience, right? That's one of our main sources of learning. We say that we learn from book learning and reading the newspaper and watching the TV news and listening to our side relentlessly in our bubbles. But really what we do, in real life, people learn by experiencing. You do something and that bites them in the ass and they say, maybe I should... And then after 5 or 6 times of getting drunk out of their gourd and barfing every morning, they cut back on liquor or else they become an alcoholic and die. Okay, so how do they learn? They learn from experience, and they had a cause. Their action was a cause. They had effects. They evaluate the effects, and then they change their behavior. Acts adjusted to ends. That's how Herbert Spencer described the basic nature of human action. So, how do we learn? Experience and reason applied to experience and judging the effects of our acts. In politics, what are the effects of our acts? We vote. And does our vote ever count? No, I know no one whose vote has ever counted, because no one has decided an election. So every person I've ever met has spent much of their life talking about politics, and they vote, and they've never gotten what they wanted because of their vote. So nothing hinged on their vote. It's always hinged on other people. It's mass of mankind doing whatever they do. And so in the place of experience and reason and effects of their individual action, they place a whole bunch of ideology and misinformation, disinformation, and reason and unreason.
There's no feedback on voting.
There's very little feedback back on voting. So what we get is that you have to actually spend a lot of time. That's why you expect a person who's interested in politics to not merely keep up with the news, but to also read history. And not merely read history, but study sociology. And not merely study sociology, but political science. That would be good if you're in politics.
Oh, but all of these newscasters do that. I think they spend most of their time away from the camera reading history.
I didn't finish. Yeah. And then economics. You might actually learn about economics. Because here we have the science that is actually devoted to studying cause and effect of the social realm on a methodological individualist basis. That is, microeconomics is all about that. And they try to tease out cause and effect and how people learn in the real world of trading. And then also in politics. It's called public choice, a whole domain devoted to it. And I bet this man right here has never read one word of it. If he has, there's no evidence for it because he's just a simple ideologue. So the question is, how does a person determine his interest? In normal, polite society, we don't say, oh, you don't agree with me, you're wrong, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're doing whatever you're doing against your interest. We, most of the time, actually give people, adults, enough rope to hang themselves or pull themselves out of the gutter. We don't immediately strangle them with it and say, you're wrong, and I'm right. This man is basically doing that. He's basically saying, you guys are all wrong, and I'm going to explain it to you by not explaining it. And he goes on. This is kind of why politics is such a mess, is because he thinks he's just explained something, and he's explained nothing. However, I've given you a reason why in politics, people often don't vote their interest, because they don't know what their interest is. They know what they like. And what we like depends on all sorts of things. Lots of white voters in red states are Christians, and they're conservatives, and they don't trust people buttoning their lives, and they don't trust, people in suits telling them what to do. And maybe they're being played, and they often are being played by their politicians, just as the Democrats are. I mean, if you are a Democrat, a true blue Democrat, and you're an enthusiastic voter, supporter of Hillary Clinton, you're being played. Because this is one of the most corrupt candidates of modern times. But you don't see it that way because you've been well-trained. Lots of people are well-trained. The only way to break out of that is to actually study something out of your comfort zone. So, if you're an economist, you should study social psychology and history and political science and maybe regular psychology and maybe mereology and philosophy. If you're a sociologist, you should study some economics at least. I mean, you need to go out of your comfort zone and challenge your ideas every now and then, because Nietzsche had it right. The point isn't really, when it gets down to it, having the courage of one's convictions. The point is, rather, to have the courage to mount attack upon one's convictions. And this man, I don't believe, has ever done it.